Abdul Rahman. I'm a lecturer at a public university in Kenya. I deliver lectures in computing and informatics. In our last lesson, we discussed about multidimensional array. We have seen that multidimensional array, they are the ones which have got more than one dimension. An example, there were many of them: 2D array, 3D array, 4D array, up to ND array. And onto that, today we are going to discuss what it is actually, how do you access a 2D array. So into that particular area, we are going to ask ourselves how to access 2D array elements, and in that particular journey we are going to define how or describe how can we actually access a 2D array. And then basically we are going to see the syntax of accessing a 2D array, and finally we are going to finish up this particular journey by implementation of a 2D array element. So let's start and see what is actually a 2D array element access. So we are saying basically if somebody wants to access a 2D array, he has to use both the rows indexes and the column index. So these are the key things for us to access those particular array. For example, let's take for example, if we have an array of 3 rows and basically 2 columns, how would we access this particular array? So basically let's conceptualize it and put it up into a diagram. So this particular array, basically how many elements does it hold? It will be 3 times 2, which is 6 elements. So it holds actually 6 elements. So let us draw. So you've got 2 rows. We've got 2 rows, and we have got 2 columns, sorry, and 2 rows, so, and 3 rows. So these are the 2 columns and 3 rows. So basically we can say this actually it is row 0, and this it is row 1, and this is row 2. And here basically we have got column 0 and we've got column 1. So basically if we want to access, we are going to use some indexes. Now if this particular box holds 10, and here we have got 20, 30, 40, 50 and 60. So how do we access? So basically we are accessing it using up our row 0 and basically our column 0. So this particular one will give up our value of 10. And then we've got our row 0. This is the row 0, and column 1 will give up a value of 20. And then we've got the row 1 and column 0 giving us the value of 30. And then we have our row 1 and column 0, column 1 give us the value of 40. And then we have got our row 2, column 0 give us the value of 50, and finally row 2, column 1 give us the value of 60. So basically this it is how you actually access 2D array elements. So with that particular note, it's taking us to our syntax. So our syntax, as expected, will be having up the array name, and then we'll have our row index inside here, and then here we'll have our column index. So this basically will be up the syntax. So if we take up the above example, basically we are saying int a 3 rows and 2 columns. And if we have got these particular values, let's take for example, the first row we have got 1 and 2. The second row we have got 3 and 4. And the third row we have got 5 and 6. So if it is actually our array, a 2D array, then how do we access each and every one of these particular numbers? So if you want to access this particular number, that is which it is actually in row 0, and this it is in row 1, and this it is in row 2. And here we have, this is actually in column 1, column 0 and column 1. This is column 0, column 1. This is column 0 and column 1. So if you want to access this particular number, so basically this particular number will be A of 0, 0. So this other number will be A of 0, row and column 1. So this will be the number here. Now this particular number we are talking about, it is A of what? Of row 1, column 0. And this particular number will be A of actually row 1, column 1. And this particular number will be A of column 2, row 0. And this particular number will be A of column 2, row 1. So basically this is how actually it is accessed. Now with that particular knowledge in mind, let's go and see how we can implement this in depth C++. So in our implementation, we are going to use up actually a for loop. 2 of them, 4 loops. One loop will be to access the row, and the second loop will be to access the column. So basically this is how we are going to, it has to iterate. The first loop iterate through actually column 0, 1 and 2. The second loop, it has to iterate through column 1 and column 2. When it exits, then it moves on to the second row. When exit to the third row until finally it finishes. So let's go to depth C++ and see actually how we can implement the same. So here basically we'll have our array int A will be at with 3 columns, and basically with 3 rows and 2 columns. And basically we are going to give it some values. So let's do it back again. So here we'll have 3 columns. We'll have our 3 columns, our 3 rows against our 2 columns, and then we give them some values. So let's give them some values. Basically we can give them some values. So our values maybe will be 10, 20. Remember now they have to have 6 values, and then for the second row we'll have 30, 40, and then with the third row we'll have 50, 60. So these are the values we want to access using up loops. So we're putting up a loop for, so this the outer loop, it is for our row. So int row, so we'll have up our row, initialize it to 0, start up from index number 0, and our row should be actually less than the number of rows. So the number of rows are 3, so to be less than 3, and then we have to increment our row. So row plus plus, and then from here now we are putting up a nested one. So here we have gotten another 4 for the column. So here we have got our int column, whereby we initially set it also to 0, and basically our column should be less than the number of columns, which are 2, and then also our column we have to increment them. So after that, it's a very straightforward one. We have just now to print. So here, what are we doing? We are just printing printf. What are we printing? Basically, we are printing the values, both of them. So we having %d, and want to print them horizontally. So we are putting up a new line. Onto that particular new line, basically we are printing up our array, and inside our array, basically we are putting up the first indexes for the row, and then the second indexes we are putting up our column. So this particular program or algorithm will actually go through and give us our 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, and 60. So let's execute and prove that. So when actually we execute our program, we have seen that actually the output, it is 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, and 60. So basically we come up to the end of this particular session, and however, don't forget to subscribe. For now, bye.